When my brother Isaiah passed, I promised myself I would only stay with Maya for a short while, just long enough to help her find her balance again. She was grieving while raising rambunctious twin boys and trying to keep things afloat with her husband, Darren, who worked long, unpredictable shifts. I had the time, the energy, and the heart, so I moved in. That was nearly 4 years ago. In the beginning, it felt like I had a purpose. I woke up before dawn, packed the twins' snacks for school, cycled through endless piles of laundry, and quietly filled in the financial gaps that their paychecks couldn't cover. Groceries, daycare deposits, even the light bill. I used my retirement checks to smooth over the cracks without ever making it a big deal. That's what family does, I told myself. But as the months blurred into years, the gratitude began to fade. The thank yous turned into silence. What started as favors became obligations, and the space I occupied, both in the house and in their lives, grew smaller and smaller. Maya no longer asked me to join them at the dinner table. The boys, once inseparable from me, started calling Darren's mother Grandma, even though she hardly ever came by. And whenever I mentioned Isaiah, the room would go quiet, as if his memory had become a channel no one wanted to tune into anymore. Still, I stayed. I cooked meals no one commented on, adjusted to the thermostat Darren locked at 67, and pretended not to notice the annoyed glances when I played my crime dramas a little too loud. I told myself that being near my grandchildren was enough, that this was simply what late life looked like, useful but never truly cherished. Then one Tuesday evening, while I was folding the twins' socks, Maya came into the laundry room with her phone clutched tight, like she was bracing herself. "Mom," she said, her eyes sliding away from mine, "Darren's parents are moving in." I froze with a sock still in my hand. "Visiting?" I asked. She shook her head. "No. Moving in. For good. We need the space." I let out a small laugh, waiting for her to smile, waiting for the punchline that never came. Instead, she crossed her arms and said flatly, "You'll need to be out by the end of the month." At first, I chuckled again, certain she was joking. But the seriousness in her face told me otherwise. My hands moved slowly, carefully placing the socks into the basket, as though dragging out the motion might delay reality. I walked past her, quiet and composed, but in the hallway I caught sight of a family photo on the shelf. My frame. My picture. Only this time, I wasn't in it. The very next morning, I noticed the shift had already begun. Maya tapped lightly on my door, her knock faint, like I was a guest borrowing a room. She stepped in with a polite, practiced smile and a black marker in her hand. "Hey Mom," she said lightly. "Do you mind starting to pack up some of your extra things? Just to make room for Darren's folks. I figured the office closet could hold some of your boxes for now." I looked around the room. Everything inside, every quilt, every book, even the lamp I read by at night, was mine. But I forced a small nod and whispered, "Sure." Later that day, she poked her head into the kitchen while I was seasoning dinner. "Also, quick thing," she added. "His mom has sinus issues. Strong smells set her off. So maybe go easy on the garlic and curry for a while." I stirred the pot slowly and said nothing. That night, as I carried towels toward the laundry room, I heard their voices drifting from the living room. I stopped just short of the half wall, hidden in the hallway shadows. "We'll set Miss Gloria in the master bedroom," Maya was saying. "And Mr. Charles can have the guest room downstairs." "What about Mom?" Darren asked. There was a pause. Then Maya's voice came sharp and dismissive. "She can go wherever. Maybe the boys can bunk together, and we'll figure out something." Darren didn't respond. My arms sagged. The towels slipped from my hands as I crept back to my room. My chest ached like I had swallowed glass. From then on, the house felt different. Groceries changed. No more of the coffee I liked, fewer fresh fruits, more frozen meals. The thermostat dropped to 65, and no one thought to offer me a blanket. At dinner, chairs shifted. A new spot was already reserved for Darren's mother, while mine sat pushed into the corner, untouched. The boys stopped asking me for bedtime stories. When I asked why, Maya told me they were too old for that now. So I started spending evenings alone in my room, eating from a tray, watching old home videos on low volume. Sometimes, late at night, I'd wander the house barefoot, checking locks, folding a stray blanket. Routines that used to feel like care but now felt like intrusions. That's when I started keeping track. Not just of what I still owned, but of what I was no longer welcome to use. A week later, I met my oldest friend, Tosha, at Willow and Vine Cafe, where we've sat on the first Thursday of most months for as long as I can remember. She watched me stir my tea without tasting it, her brow drawn tight. "They're not easing you out," she said finally, setting her spoon down. "They already pushed you off the page." I let out a thin laugh. More air than sound. "I know," I said. "But hearing it spoken hits different." Back home, I opened my laptop and signed into my bank account, something I rarely did. I've never been one to measure love in dollars. But Tosha's words stayed on me like steam. I scrolled month by month, line by line. Grocery runs, utility drafts, transfers to Maya for emergencies, daycare deposits, sneakers for the boys, a new water heater when the old one quit in February. I started a spreadsheet. When I finished, the total blinked up at me. Just over $31,400. I leaned back, the number throbbing in my mind. Over $31,000 from a fixed check. Quiet money that kept their home humming, invisible and unnamed. I slid open the drawer where I keep the papers I don't want to think about and pulled out a soft-edged manila folder. Years ago, right after Isaiah passed, I had nearly bought a small one-bedroom on the south side. I'd scraped together a deposit and was days from signing when Maya called crying. The twins' daycare fees had jumped by nearly 40%, and Darren was between contracts. I wired the deposit to her the next morning. She had promised to pay me back. That was almost 4 years ago. I closed the folder and let it rest in my lap. Something inside me settled. Not anger, not even sorrow. Clarity. This wasn't about closet space or cooking smells. It was about being valuable until I became inconvenient. I set the folder on the counter and reached for a pen. On a small sticky note, I wrote 3 lines. Find every receipt. Get the promises in writing. Track it all. I left the note by the kettle like a quiet vow. When the twins wheeled their bikes into the driveway later, I stepped into the kitchen where Maya was stirring something bland from a jar. "Where do you expect me to go?" I asked, hands folded like I was waiting to be called into an office. She didn't look up. "I don't know, Mom. You'll figure it out. Darren's parents need stability. His mom's pre-diabetic. His dad's back is bad. They need care." I almost laughed. As if I hadn't been the one shoveling snow at dawn, taking the boys to doctor's appointments, and cooking from scratch when both she and Darren were up to their necks. "You've had a good run here," she added, finally facing me. "It's time. Time. Like I'd been on an extended vacation I should be grateful for." I walked into the living room and stopped. The family photo that used to sit above the mantel, summer at Lake Merritt, Isaiah's arm around my shoulder, the boys sticky with melted popsicles, was gone. In its place sat a new gold-rimmed frame. Darren as a child beside a boy I didn't recognize. Polished. Prominent. I stood there longer than I meant to. When I turned around, Maya was already halfway up the stairs. That night, while the house buzzed with talk of arrival dates and hypoallergenic mattress covers, I took my tea into the garage and sat on the cool step by the dryer. I opened the small notebook I've kept since Isaiah died and wrote, "This is not my home anymore. But it isn't theirs yet either." I tucked the notebook away and opened the cabinet above the washer. My eyes moved slowly, taking inventory. The washer and dryer, I'd bought them outright when the old set sputtered out during flu season. The receipt was still in my email. The dining table, I'd measured that space with Tosha, making sure it could stretch for Thanksgiving. The air purifier I ordered when the boys were coughing. The instant cooker I bought myself because nobody thought to. The standing lamp in the corner. The little rug by the door after I slipped once on the tile. Every object told a story, a quiet record of care. I opened a new document and began a list. What I purchased, when, how much, and why. I cross-checked credit statements and store accounts. By the time the hallway lights dimmed, I had 3 neat folders of printed records. I slid them under my mattress and stared up at the ceiling in the stillness. Somewhere between midnight and morning, a plan took shape. Not loud, not spiteful. Just steady. By Friday, the plan had teeth. Maya was off at a work retreat, and Darren had promised to shuttle the twins between karate class and his parents' place. That gave me a 4-hour window. Just enough, if I stayed on task. I borrowed a van from a neighbor and parked it a block away. Then I texted Tosha one word. Ready. She showed up 10 minutes later, sleeves rolled up, eyes sharp. We moved in silence, no slamming drawers, no dragging chairs, just quiet, practiced motions. First, the closet, my linens, my coats, the sewing machine tucked behind an old humidifier. Then the living room, the rug I'd bought after nearly slipping on the tile, the books I'd collected one by one. Tosha paused when she spotted the one with Isaiah's handwriting in the margins. She handed it to me gently, no words needed. The kitchen took the longest. Every pan, every spatula, every appliance I had bought over the years, I packed them all. Even the instant cooker. Especially the instant cooker. We left the dining table for last. I wiped it down one final time before disassembling the leaves and wrapping the chairs in blankets. They're going to walk in and think the house collapsed, Tosha muttered. No, I said. They'll walk in and see exactly what they built when they erased me. By noon, the van was filled. I walked through the house one last time, not to reminisce, but to make sure I hadn't left behind what was mine. At the kitchen counter, I placed a single sheet of paper where they couldn't miss it. I had typed it at the library, printed it, and signed it in blue ink. What I paid for, I took. What you discarded, you can keep. No signature. Just truth. Tosha drove while I sat quietly beside her, watching the city shift through the window. The new place was small, a furnished studio with chipped counters and a stubborn heater, but the lock turned under my key. The thermostat clicked when I touched it. The silence was mine. That night, I made tea in my own mug in a kitchen that didn't resent me. Then I wrote a different kind of list, not of what I owned, but of what I wouldn't miss. The next morning, a locksmith named Jonah came by. He smelled faintly of coffee and metal. In less than 20 minutes, he had changed the locks. When he handed me the new keys, I held them longer than necessary, warm in my palm. That same afternoon, I signed a simple 1-page lease. The rent was modest, well within reach, even without touching my pension. I set up autopay from a savings account Maya didn't know about, one I'd started right after Isaiah died with small deposits here and there. Back then, I hadn't known what I was saving for. Now I did. That evening as I unpacked dishes, a knock rattled the door. My shoulders stiffened. Old habits, expecting demands, corrections. But when I opened it, a woman stood there smiling with a tin of cookies. Name's Lorraine, she said. Unit 2B. We play cards on Thursdays in the rec room. You should join. To my surprise, the yes came out of me quickly. An hour later, I was sitting at a folding table with Lorraine and 3 others. 2 widows, 1 divorced, all of us retired. We laughed over bad card hands and strong decaf. No one asked me to cook. No one corrected how I folded towels. No one expected me to be anything but present. That night, I walked back to my apartment with a lightness in my chest I hadn't felt in years. The first call came the next morning at 9:15. I let it ring. I knew that clipped impatient tone before I even saw the name. No voicemail. The second call came 20 minutes later. This time, she left a message. Hey Mom. Just wondering if you maybe took more than you needed? The fridge is empty. Did you mean to take all the pots too? By noon, she had called 5 times. The 6th message unraveled fast. The twins are upset. They can't find their cereal. Darren tried to fix dinner, but nothing's the same without the stoveware. Did you really take the washer? Yes. Yes, I had. By the 8th voicemail, her voice had shifted from sharp to pleading. Come on, Mom, this is a lot. We didn't expect everything to be gone. Could you at least bring back the air purifier? Who takes the air purifier? Someone who bought it, I thought. By the 10th call, her voice cracked. Look, maybe I didn't say it right. I was stressed. Darren's parents aren't helping. They've just added to the chaos. I didn't mean to make you feel unwanted. It wasn't about feelings. It was about truth. The 11th call came after dark. Her voice was tired, almost broken. Mom, please. I didn't think you'd actually leave. The boys keep asking where you are. Just come back. I turned the ringer off. That night, I stood at my window looking down at the quiet street, calm and still. Across town, their house was unraveling. I wasn't needed anymore, until I was missed. And there's a difference. The next day, I rinsed my teacup, dried it with a towel I bought myself, and set it back on the shelf I had drilled into the wall with my own hands. Then I walked to a lawyer's office tucked between a dry cleaner and a florist. Ms. Clayton, calm but firm, flipped through my folders, bank statements, receipts, appliance invoices, even an old grocery ledger. No formal lease, she said, but you'd qualify as a contributing tenant. That means you had rights. You could file a claim for reimbursement. Or you can walk away. Your choice. I already knew. I didn't want their money. I wanted the dignity they had mistaken for obligation. That night, I wrote a letter. Maya, I wasn't just living there. I was investing my money, my time, my care. You treated me like a tenant when it suited you, and like a burden when it didn't. I didn't leave because I was hurt. I left because I remembered who I am. You've lost more than a housekeeper, a cook, a babysitter. You've lost your mother. That cost won't show up in your bank account, but it will echo in your home. I signed it, sealed it, and mailed it without a return address. When I got back, Lorraine had left a pie on my doorstep with a note. See you Thursday. Bring your sass. I smiled, unlocked my door, and stepped into my space. That evening, Tasha arrived with boxed wine, crackers, and laughter that filled the little studio like sunlight. We toasted like two college girls, wheezing with laughter, free from the clock watching and corrections of someone else's house. The next day, Lorraine knocked again, this time with a hand-stitched potholder, purple with gold trim. Housewarming gift, she said. Made it years ago when my hands were steadier. I hung it on the oven handle where it belonged. A few days later, a thick envelope came in the mail. Inside was a crayon drawing taped to a paper plate, a little house, a crooked chimney, and 3 stick figures labeled Grandma's house. I pressed it to my chest for a long moment before pinning it to the fridge. I didn't have a master suite anymore, or a dining room full of family photos. But I had peace. And this time, I wasn't just in a house. I owned the piece of life inside it. In the end, she didn't just leave a house. She claimed a life. What once felt like obligation became freedom. What once was silence became laughter. And what once was taken for granted became hers again. Dignity, peace, and the joy of living in a space that finally felt like home. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, don't forget to follow, like, and share.